This is Do School Better, a podcast for people who want to transform education. My name is Doris Korda, and for the past several years, I've been training educators. Listen to these episodes and hear about some of the extraordinary programs they've created. We call these pioneers the fire starters. See if you can get some ideas that you can implement yourself to change your own practice.
In this episode, Doris speaks with Kesha Conway, the program director of Ashtabula Leadership County. Kesha discusses her entrepreneurial leadership course that she piloted with public school students in her rural community. Please note, this is a new recording. The first version we had done had poor audio quality.
Kesha, I am so excited to talk to you.
Me too, Doris. Good to hear you.
Yay. Well, if you could tell the listeners a little bit about you and where you're working and why you came to the workshop and what you've done since.
All right. It's been a wild, awesome year. I ran 2 leadership entrepreneurship programs. The first one that I ran was just so successful that we piloted another one at another school. And I'm doing all of this out in Ashtabula County. So it's a huge county. It takes me, an hour to go from top to bottom, but it's also one of the least populated. It's extremely rural. There's lots of agriculture out here. And we have maybe 100,000 people. So wow. That's where I am, and that's where really good things are happening right now.
That's awesome. And you work with 7 public high schools, correct? There's 7 public school districts out there?
Yes, there's 7 public school districts. There's only 2 private ones, but I'm doing all of the work in public schools.
With public schools. And it's because it's so rural and spread out, it's pretty under-resourced relative to what people might think of with other public school districts, yes?
Yeah, so to give you an example, a lot of the students that I work with technically get out of school around after lunch, which sometimes is around 10:30, because there aren't electives for them.
Wow.
So they're going out and working at the local grocery store to get quote unquote elective credits.
Wow.
So it's interesting.
And you decided,
very challenging.
I'm sure it's very challenging. And you decided to come to the workshop to build a leadership entrepreneurship class. And tell us what happened. Tell us how it went, what you did, what the students did.
Well, my plan before the workshop was a lot different than afterwards. I was overwhelmed with all of the tools and you gave me so much to work with, and even after doing it twice, I still feel like I haven't plugged into everything that you gave me, literally at my fingertips. I started the school year, so I went to your workshop. I planned out what I called leadership lab, which was the entrepreneurship leadership course. I had 7 students in that from 3 different school districts, and we solved real world problems from a local business, which was a ice cream store with that group. And we did that. We were challenged in a lot of ways. One of them was how often we could meet. And unfortunately, at the beginning, we only met once. Well, we met for a whole school day, but it was only once a month. And then as the school year progressed, we had a lot more support and buy-in from those 3 schools. And we were allowed to meet once every 2 weeks. So that helped out a lot.
Yeah, and those were big blocks, full days when you met.
Yes. And sometimes as 1:30 rolled around, some of the students just looked at me and they were like, I've never done this much work and had so much fun in one day.
That's awesome.
So
you did your pilot, and they worked with a local ice cream store and solved the problem of the ice cream store. And what happened? How did it go?
The first day, so I had worked with these students in a prior year, not doing this at all, but so they knew me. And that first day, they all looked at me And I could tell that they hadn't fully bought in yet, like,
Sure.
What are we doing? They didn't really believe me that they were going to be able to pitch an evidence-based solution to a business owner without using notes and being able to speak competently and confidently, like from their head and their heart in, a few months. They didn't really believe that. And as we progressed and got closer and closer to that day, that's, I think, where they really awoke, and they really surprised themselves that they were able to, and that they actually delivered on some pretty complex content and some, when you work in a small group like they did, that's not led by an adult. I mean, I was there to facilitate and to help them over, hurdles
Sure.
that they had, but they were leading each other. And those dynamics, sometimes it got a little ugly, but you know what? They figured it out. And I think that's really where they learned the most and had the most buy-in.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. So what would you say, as the teacher, as you think about what you would hope these students learned, how would you describe the learning if you think about the individual students, what they did, what they learned, what they got out of it?
Oh, so much. It's something that I really would have loved. Well, I hope that I would have been brave enough to really just throw myself into this as they did. But what they got out of it was, I think, just this substantive confidence in themselves. Doris, they really didn't think that they could do this.
Yeah.
And as much as I told them, just you wait, you know what I mean? In 2 months, you're going to look back on your presentation and you're going to be so impressed with yourself. It doesn't really mean anything until they do it.
Yeah.
I had one girl who just totally freaked out before they presented, because quite frankly, she knew it. She didn't really put that much effort into it in terms of, her team research and interviews and just she just was kind of there. She wasn't really plugged into what her team was doing, and she freaked out before the presentation. And it wasn't me giving her a pep talk before they presented, it was her team.
Wow.
And I was around and I heard what they said to her, and it's those moments that everyone in her group, they're going to take that and build off of that in everything and anything that they do. And that's really, I think, that's what I know that they learned that is the most important. They all came away with a lot more knowledge about entrepreneurship and about business and about, the retail market, so on and so on and so on. But where I saw them awaken, kind of get color in their face, you know what I mean? And really where I saw them, oh, there you are, Lakin, or you know what I mean? That's kind of where I saw them become themselves, is in those little moments in time when they were managing each other and when they were admitting to each other, hey, I don't know everything. Let's try to figure this out on our own and together.
And they're doing really, really hard work as a team and trying to, and that, which is kind of painful to watch sometimes, they're doing something really, really challenging that they really care about in a team, is going to get that sort of thing to happen that you're describing, where they learn how to collaborate and what that really feels like and what it means to do it well. And did you see them getting better at these things over the course of your pilot?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was almost a shame that the semester ended. I would love, one of my long-term goals is to facilitate this type of course with students that are not seniors. And then, meaning that they're freshman, sophomore, or juniors, and then have the ability for them to be in a similar setting in another class. Do you know what I mean? And like build off
the skills and everything.
Yeah. I mean, it was a shame that the semester ended because they were hooked. They were hooked. They loved assuming responsibility for their learning and their success. It was a pleasure to experience with them. It really was.
So when you think about this, I know you did it again the next semester and you've had a lot of success with it, and you're planning to work with a teacher who's in one of the public schools to develop a new class there and co-teach with her. What does this mean for these students when they come out of a class like this? How have they been changed, and what do you think they take with them that's lasting from this?
Like I said before, their confidence in themselves. They know that they can do something that's really hard, that has high stakes, and they can deliver on it. I think it's also what they get out of it is when there is no answer, right? Like, I didn't have the answer. They didn't know the answer. This business owner didn't have the answer. They now know how to navigate that unknown, right?
Yep.
They learned how to create a process.
Yeah,
exactly. And it's easy to say, solve this problem, but it's really hard to do. And the fact that they do it, I mean, they are doing it.
Yes.
Is just such a gift for them and for their future.
I love the way you said they had to create a process, and they learned that they could do that. That is so different than what students do in traditional classes. And it's so much harder. It's that line, it's not about the product, it's about the process. It is harder,
but you know what? Kind of what you said before, it was a little painful to watch, because initially they would spend probably 10 minutes talking with each other. They would do some surface research, and then they'd be like, well, now what? Like, I don't know what to do. And then they would come to me and they would ask, like, so now what do we do? Or, well, what we originally thought might not work. Now what?
Right. They wanted you to give them the instructions.
Yes. Yeah. And what I think is really powerful about this, and, using a real problem that's urgent, that I didn't make all this up, right? Because what's really important, I think, about that is that I don't have the answer, right? And so I can't get lazy and give it to them.
Right.
So I really appreciated that part of that, because there were times when I think I would get lazy, and I just really wanted to be like, you are going in the absolute wrong direction, go this way. But I had to sit back and think, well, one, I don't really know if that's true. And two, every time that I would sort of get lazy and slip them a major hint or something, they thought they wanted that, but like after I would slip them that hint, so to speak, they were kind of turned off by it.
Well, because it was no longer theirs.
Yeah, they, yes, exactly. It wasn't theirs. And so they didn't really even take my suggestion, because it was my suggestion. So we had to get over that. And that, I mean, it didn't take as long as I thought it would, when I behaved myself and I asked them questions. And then after that, they really figured out how to process. I mean, there's loads of information out there, believe it or not, on ice cream shops and things of like. So they had to process all of that information and figure out what was good information, what was bad information, what was relevant, and then build off of that. So it was really, really awesome to see them do that, and sometimes not do it well, but to learn from it. I mean, because they had to, you know what I mean? They had no choice.
Yep. Did you have them do the share out presentations along the way, so they continued to learn to present and to distill?
Yep. And I remember, at your workshop, you telling us that really worked for you. And then my knee-jerk reaction was, yeah, well, but one group isn't going to want to share everything that they've done with the other group. You know what I mean? They're going to be very secretive. But I did it anyway. And it was an eye-opener for me because, one, they weren't like that at all. They just shared everything, and they worked with each other. Like each group worked with the other one, and they said, hey, check out this, or hey, did you think about that? Or, oh my gosh, what are you going to do next? And that piece, along with reflection, I think was a big game changer, and it really moved. I mean, I think that was a big contributor to how successful these kids were.
That's fantastic. So then these students, they had their final presentation, and what happened? Because you invited the superintendent, right?
Yes. So not only did these kids have to present to the business owner and her investors, also in the audience were a few superintendents and a few principals of local high schools. So it was a packed house.
And how did it go?
It was awesome. I mean, me sitting in the audience, I'm getting all teary-eyed because these students have made such fast and furious progress. Both teams knocked it out of the park. The business owner was, super impressed with the actual business solutions that these students came up with. And afterwards, two superintendents approached me and said, I think I have some teachers that are looking for something like this. Let's talk about that. So I think it went really well.
That's wonderful. And so you did it again in the spring with a different group of students. And there's now another teacher from a public school in Ashtabula County coming, and who's a high school teacher, yes, who's going to create a class, an academic class, using these methods as well.
Yep. Next fall, we're going to co-teach at Lakeside together, which is the school that she's at. I can't get enough of this. And I don't want to spoil it for her in terms of the workshop, because she keeps asking me questions, and I'm so excited for her to make this her own and to use all of the tools that you give us and all of the resources, and just to see what her ideas are. She's going to take this so far, and I'm just so excited to help her along the way. What I did tell her, though, is going to your workshop, Doris, it's like Christmas morning.
Oh gosh. You're silly.
It is because there's all this anticipation, and then you give us so many tools to use, and I don't even think that I've used them all yet. And my programs have been met with such success. I mean,
you're very sweet, Kesha.
I'm overwhelmed.
You're very sweet. You came to the workshop, and you were really nervous about teaching this kind of class to public high school kids. And you've talked about the growth, not only in this podcast, but you've told me about the incredible growth of your students over the past year. What has this done for you as a teacher? You've done such a great job of teaching this past year. Your students have gotten so much out of this. How has this been for you as a teacher, doing something this weird in a class where you have academic objectives? What's it been like for you?
It's given me so much more confidence in myself and in my abilities. I mean, I always knew that I could do something like this, but really actually doing it and having the support of you has been fantastic. I've never collaborated on something like this. I felt like you were right there with me every single step of the way. That's always been a professional challenge for me, is to, find the right people at the right time. And I've done that now. And it's been such an awesome experience for me professionally and personally. And, doing this twice and, having met with such success in terms of the students, I feel like I can be a stronger advocate for them. I mean, they crave learning like this, Doris. It was amazing. It was almost shocking how quickly they adapted to what I was throwing at them. And all of this has enabled me to become a more outspoken advocate for them.
Well,
Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense, because it's empowering for these students as they learn what they're capable of and as they see what they're capable of. I have been so excited to see your empowerment, your really taking on this role as a teacher and thriving. And, we're all trying. You talked about collaboration. We're all trying to develop better ways of educating students for this very strange new world that they're entering into. And it's really hard to do that alone. And when you have someone you can work with, and I'm glad I was helpful, but I've done so much of this that for me, it's a pleasure to be able to share with somebody who's as excited as you are to take it on. And oh my gosh, Kesha, you're doing such a great job with your students. I'm really excited for your students next year, and I'm excited for you to collaborate with the teachers in Ashtabula.
Me too. I can't wait. It's like, let's go, Summer, get it over with. Yeah. Like, I want to do this again and again and again.
Awesome. Well, Kesha, thank you so much. You're terrific.
Thank you, Doris.
If you like the podcast, please consider leaving a review on iTunes. For more information about our training, go to wildfire-education.org.